Daniel and Marcus had been best friends for almost 15 years. They met when they were teenagers. They grew up together, fought together, celebrated together. And when Daniel started his own construction company, Marcus was the first person he trusted enough to bring into the business. To Daniel, Marcus wasn't just a friend, he was family. They shared everything, except secrets. At least that's what Daniel believed. Daniel was 31, hardworking, ambitious, and finally successful. After years of struggling, his company had started making serious money. He had just bought a beautiful house on the outskirts of the city, and he was preparing for the biggest moment of his life, his wedding. His fiancée, Vanessa, was 28, beautiful, intelligent, charming. Daniel was completely in love with her. Every morning he would wake up and send her the same message. "Good morning, my future wife." And every morning Vanessa replied with a heart. Daniel had no idea that behind those messages, something was already changing. It started with Marcus. One evening, Daniel invited Marcus over for dinner. The two men sat outside on the balcony, drinking and talking about the wedding. Daniel smiled. "Can you believe it?" he asked. Marcus laughed. "Believe what?" "That I'm actually getting married." Marcus raised his glass. "To Daniel and Vanessa." They clinked glasses. Daniel looked at his best friend. "I honestly couldn't have made it this far without you." Marcus smiled, but there was something strange in his eyes, something Daniel didn't notice. "You'll never have to worry about me," Marcus said. Daniel nodded. "I know." Those words would later haunt him, because Marcus had already made a decision. He wanted Daniel's money, and he didn't want to wait. Marcus knew Daniel's finances. He knew the company's accounts. He knew where Daniel kept important documents. He knew his passwords. He even knew about the insurance policy Daniel had taken out shortly before the wedding. And Marcus knew one more thing. Vanessa had access to Daniel's personal life. If they worked together, they could take everything. But there was a problem. Vanessa didn't know about the plan, not yet. That changed one rainy Thursday night. Marcus sent her a message. "We need to talk." Vanessa stared at the screen. She hesitated, then replied, "About what?" Marcus typed 3 words. "About Daniel." She didn't know it yet, but that message was the beginning of the end. It was nearly midnight when Vanessa met Marcus in a quiet cafe. Rain hammered against the windows. The restaurant was almost empty. Vanessa sat across from him. "Why did you ask me to come here?" Marcus leaned forward. "I need your help." Vanessa frowned. "My help with what?" Marcus pulled out his phone. He showed her photographs, bank statements, property documents, business records. Vanessa's eyes widened. "Where did you get all this?" "Daniel trusts me." She stared at him. "And why are you showing me?" Marcus lowered his voice. "Because we're going to take it from him." Vanessa froze. For several seconds, she didn't speak. Then she laughed nervously. "You're joking." "I'm not," Marcus explained the plan. They would convince Daniel to move some of his money into an account they controlled. Then they would create fake business problems, make it look like Daniel's company was losing money. Once Daniel became desperate, they would convince him to sell certain assets. Those assets would eventually end up under their control. Vanessa listened. At first, she looked terrified. Then something changed. She asked quietly, "How much?" Marcus smiled. "Enough for both of us to disappear." Vanessa looked down at her hands. Daniel had never been poor with her. He bought her gifts, paid their bills, planned their wedding. But greed has a dangerous voice, and sometimes it whispers louder than love. Vanessa finally looked up. "What's my part?" Marcus smiled. "You're the key." From that night forward, everything changed. Vanessa began acting differently around Daniel. But Daniel didn't notice. She became more affectionate, more attentive. She asked questions about his finances, questions she had never asked before. "How much is in the business account? What happens if something happens to you? Who inherits the company?" Daniel answered without suspicion, because he trusted her. One evening, Vanessa asked him to sign several documents. She told him they were related to their wedding arrangements. Daniel didn't read every page. Why would he? He trusted the woman he planned to marry. And while Daniel slept peacefully upstairs, Vanessa and Marcus were texting. "He signed it," Marcus replied. "Perfect." Then another message appeared. We're almost there. But the plan was about to become something far more dangerous. Because Marcus and Vanessa stopped pretending their relationship was purely business. They began meeting alone. At first, they talked about the scam. Then they talked about themselves. Then they crossed a line they could never uncross. One night, Marcus looked at Vanessa and asked, "Do you really love him?" Vanessa didn't answer. Marcus moved closer. "Because if you did," he paused, "you wouldn't be here." She should have walked away. She didn't. The betrayal became physical. And soon, Vanessa discovered she was pregnant. She stared at the pregnancy test in her bathroom. 2 lines. Her hands began shaking. She sat on the floor. For the first time, the consequences became real. She wasn't just betraying her fiancé anymore. There was now a child involved. Vanessa called Marcus. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Then Marcus asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "Daniel can't know." Vanessa started crying. "What are we going to do?" Marcus answered coldly. "We continue the plan." She stared at the phone. "But the baby, we'll deal with that later." Vanessa realized something terrifying. Marcus didn't love her. He didn't care about the baby. He only cared about the money. And now she was trapped. But Daniel still knew nothing. He continued preparing for his wedding. He continued trusting his best friend. And he continued loving the woman who was betraying him. Until one small mistake changed everything. 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel noticed something strange. Money was missing from the company. Not millions. Just small amounts. Amounts designed not to attract immediate attention. But Daniel knew his business. He checked the accounts again. The numbers didn't make sense. He called Marcus. "Bro, did you authorize these transfers?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yeah." "Why?" "Supplier payments." Daniel frowned. "Which supplier?" Marcus gave him a name. Daniel checked. The company didn't exist. His stomach tightened. "Marcus?" "Yeah?" "Something isn't right." Marcus laughed. "You're stressed about the wedding, man." Daniel forced a smile. "Maybe." He ended the call. But something had changed. For the first time, Daniel doubted his best friend. That night, he couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop. He started reviewing old transactions. Then he found another transfer, and another, all connected to different accounts. But there was one common detail. Every transaction had been approved using information Vanessa had access to. Daniel's heart sank. No. He refused to believe it. He needed proof. So he decided to investigate quietly. The next morning, he told Vanessa he was going on a business trip. He wasn't. Instead, he stayed in the city. And that evening, he followed her. Vanessa drove to a small apartment. Daniel parked several streets away. He watched. 10 minutes passed. Then Marcus arrived. Daniel's hands tightened around the steering wheel. "Marcus?" His best friend walked into the apartment. Daniel couldn't breathe. He waited. 1 hour, 2 hours. Then Marcus came outside. Vanessa followed. They hugged. Daniel felt something inside him collapse. He wanted to confront them. He wanted to scream. But instead, he recorded everything. Then he drove away, his eyes filled with tears. Not because of the money, not because of the wedding, because the 2 people he trusted most had betrayed him together. But Daniel still didn't know the full truth. The next morning, he checked Vanessa's phone while she was asleep. He saw the messages, thousands of them, plans, transfers, meetings. And then he saw one message that made his entire body go cold. "I'm pregnant." Daniel stared at the screen. He read it again and again. Then another message appeared. Marcus had replied, "Don't tell Daniel. We finished the scam first." Daniel slowly placed the phone down. His face became completely expressionless. He walked into the bathroom, closed the door, turned on the tap, and finally, he broke down. Years of friendship, years of love, everything had been a lie. But Daniel wasn't going to confront them yet. He had learned something important. When people betray you secretly, they usually make one mistake. They become confident. And when they become confident, they become careless. Daniel decided to let them continue. He pretended everything was normal. He smiled. He kissed Vanessa. He shook Marcus's hand. He even continued planning the wedding. But behind their backs, Daniel was building a case. He contacted his lawyer. He secured his accounts, changed his passwords, protected his company, and gathered every piece of evidence. Then he discovered something even worse. Marcus wasn't planning to steal only Daniel's money. He had also been preparing documents that could transfer ownership of part of the company. If Daniel had gone through with the original plan, he could have lost almost everything. Daniel sat alone in his office. The evidence covered his desk. He looked at a photograph of himself and Marcus from when they were teenagers. They were smiling, arms around each other's shoulders. Daniel whispered, "I trusted you." Then he turned the photograph face down. The wedding day arrived. The church was filled with people. Flowers covered the entrance. Music played softly. Guests smiled. Daniel stood at the altar in a black suit. Vanessa walked toward him. Everyone saw a beautiful bride. But Daniel saw something else. A woman who had betrayed him. A woman carrying another man's child. A woman who had planned to destroy him. Vanessa reached the altar. She smiled. Daniel smiled back. The priest began the ceremony. "Do you, Daniel, take Vanessa?" Daniel looked directly into her eyes. For a moment, he almost said nothing. Then he answered, "I do." Vanessa smiled, but she didn't know what was coming. The priest turned to her. "And do you, Vanessa?" Before she could answer, Daniel raised his hand. "Actually," the room went silent. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Daniel reached into his jacket. He pulled out a folder. "I think everyone deserves to know the truth." Marcus stood among the guests. His face changed instantly. Daniel opened the folder. "The money transfers." He dropped the documents onto a table. The fake companies. More papers. The messages. Printed screenshots. Vanessa's face went pale. Daniel looked at Marcus. "And the affair." The room erupted in whispers. Marcus stood frozen. Vanessa began crying. "Daniel, please." Daniel shook his head. "Don't," she whispered. "I can explain." "No." Daniel's voice remained calm. "You had months to explain." Marcus stepped forward. "Daniel, listen to me." Daniel looked at him. "You were my brother." Marcus stopped. "You knew everything about me." Daniel's voice cracked. "And you used everything I told you against me." Then Daniel revealed the final piece. "The baby isn't mine." The room fell silent. Vanessa covered her face. Marcus looked at the floor. Everyone knew. The wedding was over. But Daniel wasn't finished. He handed the evidence to his lawyer. The authorities were already waiting outside. Marcus and Vanessa were taken away for questioning. Daniel stood alone in the church. The flowers were still beautiful. The music had stopped. The wedding cake remained untouched. Everything looked perfect. Except for him. Months later, Daniel rebuilt his life. The company survived. His finances were protected. And the people who betrayed him faced the consequences of their actions. But Daniel was different. He stopped trusting people blindly. He learned that betrayal doesn't always come from an enemy. Sometimes, it comes from the person sitting beside you. The person who knows your dreams, your weaknesses, your secrets. The person you call family. One evening, Daniel returned to the balcony where he and Marcus had once celebrated his engagement. He looked at the empty chair beside him. For a moment, he remembered their old conversations, the jokes, the struggles, the promises. Then he smiled sadly. Not because he had forgotten, because he had finally let go. His phone rang. It was an old business partner. "Daniel, how are you doing?" Daniel looked out over the city. "I'm doing better." "Are you happy?" Daniel paused, then answered, "I'm learning to be." He ended the call. The city lights stretched endlessly in front of him. Daniel had lost a friend. He had lost a fiancée. He had lost the future he thought he wanted. But he had gained something more important, the truth. And sometimes, the truth hurts. Sometimes it destroys everything. But once the lies are gone, you finally have the freedom to rebuild. Daniel walked back inside, closed the balcony door, and never looked back. Because the greatest betrayal wasn't that they tried to steal his money, it was that they tried to steal his trust, and that was something they could never give back. Please like the video, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment below. See you next time. Bye.